Welcome again to Lakeshore Focus, a weekly show highlighting the key issues, important events, and interesting people in our region. I'm Keith Kirkpatrick. Today's guest has an incredibly vast knowledge of the events and issues that have defined our region. Here to share his experiences before he heads toward the California sun is Steve Walsh, a veteran journalist and the host of Regionally Speaking. Steve, you're on TV now.
Yes, indeed. Well, I'm on TV every week with Lakeshore Report, but not as much as you are. I only get a couple of minutes there.
So, but you chuckled loudly when I did the read-through about the vast knowledge of the region.
Vast knowledge of the region, right. So, what do you need to know? Let's see if I can answer the question.
So, you know what's interesting and why I said that was if I talk to people around here and ask them about a journalist that they say really knows a lot about what's going on, your name always comes up.
Really? Because it's a small station and there aren't that many of us, basically?
Well, but you've been in media for a while around here. You're kind of a name that a lot of people know. You started with the Vidette Messenger, right?
I did, which was a daily newspaper that was in Valparaiso, Indiana. I did it back in the 90s. That's when I started, early 90s. And I stayed there when they were bought out by the Times, and then I was there for a couple of years, and then I went on to the Post-Tribune, which that was probably my biggest print success there. They sent me to Iraq a couple of times. I was a State House reporter for a lot of years. It was a lot of fun.
So you did all that, and then you've been doing radio now for what, 5, 6 years, 7?
Yeah, it's more than that. I went to Chicago. There was a project with WBZ in Chicago called Vocalo. It was basically a storytelling project. I did that for a couple of years, and then I came here, and I've been here for a little over 4 years. And I went through and I checked my notes. It looks like I started Regionally Speaking about 3 years ago, or at least I became the host.
Well, you and I have talked about this a couple times, and I'm always impressed with your knowledge of the issues and what's going on in the region, because you ask great questions, and you even lead a lot of your guests by saying, hey, so this is going on, and so what's your reaction to it? And you seem to sometimes know what the guests don't know.
Well, okay. Well, yeah, sometimes it's okay. But a lot of that, of course, as you know, is, yeah, I know a lot of stuff. And I was a couple of weeks ago, I was on air and I had somebody on talking about the Lincoln Highway, like some project to expand that. And I realized I could explain how the interstate highway system worked and how it related back to this early road. It's like, where is this stuff coming from? It's all just sort of sitting back there. But of course, on the other hand, it's a lot of it's preparation. You just spend hours back there going through, making sure you have everything down there. Not so much so you can do the talking, but that you know where the topic needs to go, so you can get that guest out there so they can really tell their view.
How much time do you feel like you spend for every hour you're on the air? How much time do you spend prepping?
I mean, between prepping and finding people to come on and creating the panels, it's just hours. I mean, I usually I'll start around 8 o'clock or so, and my show moved to noon, but it was 1 o'clock, and that would usually be, but then you get, after the show is over, then you're trying to find more people, you're going through and researching topics, and that goes on through the nights, it goes on through the weekends, and all for almost so much of the time for shows that can change right at the last second here. I had a show just on, would be today's show with Amir Karen Freeman Wilson. She was at some conference out in Salt Lake City, and they put her up on stage 10 minutes before our airtime. So it's like, so I got a call from her assistant that she can't do the show. First guest, the lead show, and the mayor of the city of Gary. So we had to scramble and move everybody else around. Finally, we got her on right at the end of the show.
So as they say, you could sing and dance, but you can't really dance on radio, so you just have to sing, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of fill the time?
Well, no, you have other guests. You call people at the last moment and get them on. You take your guests that were going here and you move them up there. If you're lucky and you're working ahead, maybe you have some recorded things that you can switch around in there. But a lot of times you're just doing things on the fly. We've had when the Supreme Court overturned Indiana's same-sex marriage statute. I mean, we were just grabbing people basically right on the fly and getting them on air, including the clerk in Lake County who was talking about how people were calling him already to drive down to the courthouse to get a legal marriage in Indiana. You just vamp.
How do you stay up on everything that's going on? I mean, you say I'm researching and everything, but I mean, what do you do to stay up? on it. Now, and that's a great piece of advice because there's people who are trying to keep up.
Oh, I know.
What do they need to do?
Well, I know, and I understand because media has become so fragmented. It's really a matter of not so much, do you just read a newspaper or whatever? I mean, the media is so completely fragmented. A lot of it is a matter of what do you trust? Can you really believe? And some of that is just double checking your sources and but I'm on Twitter a lot. You have a lot of journalists as well. A lot of sources are up on Twitter. They're telling the general public what's going on before they're even telling your colleagues in the media. I read a lot of newspapers, a lot of blogs, not as many blogs as there used to be. I'm reading a lot of trade journals to get a sense of people are saying that this is going to be the next big thing coming up, or this study just came out, things like that. And I'm reading source materials like the studies themselves and so I'm all over. I'm an omnivore. And if people follow me on Facebook or Twitter, they'll see that I'll push a lot of that stuff out.
Now this is interesting as I watch you here on TV. You use your hands a lot. Do you do this also on the radio?
My God, it's worse. It's worse on the radio.
But nobody can see it.
No, then nobody can see it. And I've got an engineer there, which I'm supposed to be, hand signaling him, and all of a sudden I'm talking, and I have the tendency to do this a lot for no particularly good reason while I'm on there. I think Gene Shepard, there's a picture of him that does, I don't know why that is. It seems to make my voice work better if I'm doing a lot of gesticulating.
And you're always dressed like this too? Is that what
No, I'm never dressed like this.
Good.
I keep this out in the hallway because I do some TV. So if I have a wedding or something, I have to stop by the station before I can go because it's all sitting here, all my selection of ties and everything.
So it's just kind of throw it on.
Yeah.
So why do you said people need to? You got to figure out what journalists you can trust.
Yeah.
Can people trust you as a journalist, and why?
Oh gosh, I hope so. I mean, it's really up to them.
But why?
The response I get to regionally speaking, and I do a lot of things like election night coverage and things like that, is I try to ask tough, probing, very direct questions. But the idea is not, if you watch a lot of cable TV, a lot of people will do that, but they do that basically to score points with people. There are hosts throughout the political spectrum that will just sit there and hit people with questions, really not even giving them the chance to answer that question. And I think the difference between me and I think the difference when it comes to public media in general is I'll ask a tough question, but I'm never going to ask a question that I don't want to know the answer to. You will get your time to be able to state your position. In fact, the reason I'm asking that tough question is to just get it out there so we can hear from you, so you can get your response. That's why we do a pretty good job when it comes to, we can get Glenda Ritz and Mike Pence on. We can get people throughout the political spectrum, people on both sides of same-sex marriage, things like that. We can do that because in the end, even though they might get some tough questions, they're going to have a chance to talk to people, which is getting more rare these days.
So what is the difference between probing and kind of stepping over the line? How do you know how to draw that line? Is there a line you draw?
Well, again, I mean, the thing that, and you can, and you do this too, you get out and you interview people all the time. There is a technique that is used in media where I can get up and ask you a question, and then as you start to answer my question, then I'll start asking you another question, and then another one, and another one, and you'll sit there and you'll be stammering and you'll be on your heels, and it'll look like you're lying or something like that, and really you're just trying to maneuver around the host to try to get to answer the question they've given you. In fact, maybe you're 3 questions behind at that point.
But I don't see you do that.
No, and that's the difference. That really is the difference. We really do want to get down there. We do really want to ask. We really do want to find out. We had the head of the House Education Committee. We want to find out what their position is on state testing or the new school board. We want to find out why they came to the decisions that they came to. And I think people in the end understand that. And even though in many ways it may be a little tougher than some of the interviews that they have in other places, but in the end, it's going to be your words out there.
Right. So reflecting back upon this career you've had here for probably 20-some years in our region, is there one particular story or piece that you did that I'm really proud of this, or it just really was terrific?
A lot of them, and you look back and you realize, boy, I could have covered this, and boy, if I'd only known this was happening or that was happening. But I will say the story, and like I say, the Post-Tribune sent me to Iraq a couple times. I think there was some good reporting out of there. Actually, I kind of ran into some trouble the second time that I was there, that the commander didn't particularly like me and was kind of threatening to throw me out of Iraq, which in 2005, it's like, throw me out of Iraq. I mean, seriously. But there were guys coming up to me at that time saying that our equipment is just, we're not up to the task here. Our stuff is old. Some of the stuff is Vietnam era, and they're sending this out into the field, which at the time was like one of the most dangerous times of the Iraq War. These are local guys with 113 engineers, and they were telling me that, this stuff is just not it's breaking down in the field while we're out there trying to guard, some of these Marines and the like, and they have to come back and get us.
Did you feel like your reporting did anything to help change that?
Well, that's the thing I'm getting to. And with that story, since the commander wasn't particularly and because the media, even back at that time, they could read everything that was coming online. So I stopped. I didn't try to really report that much on those things while I was there, but I took down all the information. I took the serial numbers down. Turned out a lot of that equipment was Vietnam era, especially some vehicles that they were using. And I didn't find out until I was here, actually, about a year and a half ago. I had some of those guys on, and they told me, it's like, even though I took a lot of heat from that, they came in, as soon as that story came out in the Post-Tribune, they came out like within that week, and the Army got us the equipment we needed. And all of a sudden, we had the up-armored Humvees, and we could go along there. And their impression was that, that may have saved somebody's life. Wow. So that, to me, is like one of the most significant stories. That is the power of, that's why you don't worry about whether or not people may not like you at the time, or they may not be particularly excited to see you. In the end, it's about getting the facts out there to the people, and you can make real change.
So is there a time on the other side of that where you felt like, oh my gosh, I really blew that story, I really screwed this up, or just didn't handle it well? This may be a confession or something, but but it's hard to be. There's no way to be perfect in journalism.
No, there's definitely no way to be perfect.
But sometimes you can kind of go down the wrong road and go, what was I thinking? Or, wow, I just was misled in some way.
I will tell you, on so many things, it's not a matter of just like messing up or something. It's a matter of feeling that in the end you were slow to the punch. You didn't get there. You didn't really cover that well enough at the time. You didn't understand just how big some of these things were going to be in the end. I remember when I was covering the General Assembly, it would take you a year before you really knew what happened in the General Assembly. Right. What really was significant, what they were really talking about. And some of these stories wouldn't come out, So I got to think of one off the top of my head, but yeah.
Well, as you've looked at this whole region, and that was kind of my lead, and I think you do have a knowledge of this region. When you kind of look here, if you could pick one or two things we just really need to kind of fix here in the region, or maybe in the state, and I'm going to limit you to one or two. But if you could, and I said this to Karen Freeman Wilson one time, if I give you the magic wand, okay, and you get to strike it twice, what would be the two things that you would strike and change?
Well, it's not my job to change it. I'll be honest with you. And I take that very seriously. It's like, whatever you want to do with the information is entirely up to you. If you want to take it this direction or that direction, and my answer to that question could be terrible. I will tell you there's a topic that I've covered a lot, and I've covered it throughout my entire career in Northwest Indiana, and then here especially. It is the public transit. And one of the most frustrating things, and actually one of the best thing I think I've done in the radio, and I think that the station has done, is we covered the Regional Bus Authority the day before it shut down. We went up and did a 2-hour live remote from the Dan Rabin Transit Plaza in downtown Hammond, where we got elected officials out. I think Jerry Shube was there. We had the head of all the existing transit agents. But then we also got people who were just getting off of these buses, and they were coming up to us, and we were pulling them on air, and they were talking about, like, we don't know what we're going to do tomorrow. We don't know what we're going to do. We have no way of getting around now. We're just going to become completely shut down and isolated. And I will tell you, the notion of getting bus service in this area was some of the original stuff I covered, like NERPC meetings in the 1990s. And it's just, we've struggled with that issue so much. And even when we've seen successes, like with the expansion of the South Shore, it's like, well, how are people going to get to the South Shore? We're going to have everybody get in their cars and drive to the South Shore? That's really not, that's not solving the congestion problem if that's what we're doing.
Right. Well, let me spin the question a little bit differently, because that was a great answer, thinking that's not my job. What do you think the people of this region need to know that they don't know? So what information are they missing, or what aren't they comprehending that they need?
There is a vast well of cynicism in Northwest Indiana, and it's well earned. There have been a lot of people that have gone to jail over the years. There are a lot of things that have not worked well, money that has been misspent. But I will say that I think what people don't know is that we have a U.S. attorney here who does a pretty darn good job, understands that, and can root those kinds of things out. We've had boards that have helped reform themselves. Even though there are plenty of reason for skepticism, and the newspapers are pretty good. Still, we have many good people here who can root out those kinds of stories. That even though there's every reason for people to be skeptical, there's no reason at all to be cynical. These are great communities, and they do have the ability to work together. I mean, Gary's a great town with great people.
So is part of it that people just don't realize what some of the good things are happening here,
Well,
and the improvements that have been made?
Don't let healthy, good Northwest Indiana skepticism turn into cynicism where you think, well, we can't do anything at all, because that is completely incorrect. There is no reason whatsoever that we can't tackle any one of these issues. It's going to be tough. There's so many of these different communities, and none of them is bigger than the other, which makes us look like we don't have our act together maybe more than other places, just because there are so many different players out there. Look, they consolidate 911 in Lake County, and you have almost all of these people agreeing, but then you have two communities, Cherville and St. John, not agreeing. And of course you're going to emphasize, the communities that don't agree, but they got together everybody. They got Gary and Hobart and Crown Point and Lowell and all these other communities to agree with one another to do this. You have to understand that it's not all for naught. There is a reason to keep paying attention, to stay engaged, and work through these things, because yes, these things are solvable.
In all the years you've done this, is there a couple people you like? I always enjoy talking to this person. I always enjoy interviewing this person.
Oh, there's many of them. I like Mayor Karen Freeman Wilson. I've covered her ever since she was Attorney General, and I went out to the Democratic National Convention in 2000 when she spoke at Al Gore's convention. So I have a long history there. I will say Mayor McDermott and we always have really good, really frank conversations, sometimes incredibly spirited, but you never come away thinking, well, that was a waste of everybody's time. Always something new comes out there. I think Sheriff Bunsage is another one of those people where, there have been issues and problems over the years, but he usually makes himself available. Congressman Visklosky, Senator Donnelly.
You've got a long list. Now, every once in a while...
Mitch Daniels is an interesting interview, a very interesting interview.
So every once in a while, you will get that criticism. And I've heard you people, I think you sometimes think people criticize you maybe more than you realize, at least to the outside. I mean, is that criticism, is it ever valid, or what? Does anything bother you about that criticism?
I don't know.
Does it make you rethink?
I don't know. You mean that I'm seen as being tough or something?
Yeah, I don't know what it is. What is that criticism?
I know what is the criticism, and how do you respond to it? That's great. That really puts the ball in my court.
It's a tough question.
There you go.
The probing question.
Some people think, boy, that is a little tough. That you're being kind of blunt with these people. Are you being, you could be a little nicer about stuff, I guess, could be one of the critics. But, in the end, you really see the value of getting that information out to the public. And in the end, these are the questions that people want to know the answer to.
It's not
it doesn't do them any service either to pussyfoot around that and not get to the central matter and then walk off a stage and leaving those questions still out there, still lingering in the public's mind without really being able to address them. So it's as much a service to them as anyone else.
Right. It's just people don't ask the hard questions. We're not used as a society to really asking difficult questions of people. And I think that's, and people are so pretty uncomfortable with it sometimes when you really ask me a pretty probing question. It's like, wow, you're going to really make me think about that.
Yeah.
I think that's one of your strengths as a reporter. Do you see other aspects of that have made you kind of successful at what you're doing?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I am successful, frankly. I think I'm in the end a working journalist who's been out there. I'm not a particularly famous person. I probably never will be a famous person. I'm just a person who really likes chasing the story, which is what I'll be doing in San Diego. I'm excited to get back to it.
Well, maybe you don't hear it enough because I'm on the outside and I get to hear that a lot. I do hear things said about your reporting that you're good and that you know a lot of things that are going on. So I hear compliments to that. You probably don't hear them as much.
They don't come to me as much. Sometimes, actually, in the last week or so, I've gotten much more than typical. I will tell you that.
People are probably thinking they're going to miss having you around.
Or they're just happy to see me go.
So when you leave and go to sunny California, so what's one or two things you think you're going to truly miss about being gone from here?
Well, I'm going to miss a lot, and it's starting to hit me now as the days dwindle down. I mean, I grew up here. I was born in Hammond. I grew up in Munster. I've lived in Valparaiso for the past 18 years while my daughter grew up. Yeah, I mean, this is really, honestly, I've been to Baghdad, and I've taken vacations in London and Paris and the like, but I've only ever lived here. And so this is going to be a very new experience for me at this point to pick up entirely and move out here. And as I'm on the radio and I'm throwing all these odd facts that I've amassed over the years, you wonder, it's like, should be able to put it in a box somewhere so if somebody else can make use of all this stuff, because you think, wow, I'm not going to be able to, this stuff is not going to be as useful once I get to San Diego. But I'm going to miss everything. I mean, the people, for the most part, this is a wonderful area. This is an area that gets down, I think, because they get downtrodden. Indianapolis kind of looks down at everybody. Chicago looks, and we kind of think of ourselves as kind of this sort of like second-class area, but nothing could be farther from the truth. This area has so many assets, and it's more and more. I mean, I live in Valparaiso, and you see all these things coming. The downtown's looking so nice. In 18th Street Brewery in Gary, there's going to be a lot of really new things coming online over the next several years.
I knew you'd eventually get to missing the beer or something.
There you go. I hear they have craft brew in Southern California, but it's pretty nice here.
Well, you know the drill, so we're down to the end of time, and I will just at least say publicly, I'm going to miss hearing your show and hearing your thoughts, and I've really enjoyed having you here. So thanks for being on the show, and then this will be out there for people to see on the website forever.
There you go.
All right.
There you go.
Thank you, Steve, and good luck in California.
Thank you. Thanks, Keith.
All right. Complaints about the media today. They are biased, too much personal opinion, don't check their facts, or tell you only what they want you to hear. In addition, they are way too liberal, far to the right, anti-Obama, pro-democratic. The criticism is endless and often harsh. Comments are aimed at whole networks, specific stations, or the local newspapers. Every journalist, reporter, and editor are lumped into one category, and bad is a mild description of what they are called. I still believe there are a large number of media professionals who are trying to do a good job and bring accurate, unbiased reports and stories to the masses. They do operate in a media culture that has a push to sensationalize and hype the news. The motivation to sell and make money in a changing market often overrides the call to provide information and education to the public. In addition, the media consumers are drawn to the outlandish and will talk about the absurd and extreme. It's a tough business, and the people who constitute the media must operate within this environment. We, as media consumers, should take more time to applaud, recognize, and appreciate those who are working to bring objective, informative, well-researched pieces to us. Those people will definitely hear it when they overstep or are on the fringe, and they should. Yet we withhold the positive reinforcements of feedback and economic consumption which would support the positive side of this industry. Let's take the time to say, good job, well presented, or outstanding reporting to the men and women who struggle daily and hourly to give us the information we need to function in our society and be good citizens. Thanks for watching our show. Did we inspire or educate you in some way? You can send thoughts and feedback to us through the email address listed on your screen. Check out our website. It is full of interesting features. Specifically, you can watch past episodes of Lakeshore Focus. Just go to the www.lakeshorepublicmedia.org. Click on the TV, scroll down till you see my picture with a different jacket and tie. One more click and you can view a list of previously aired shows. Tell your friends and family that you watch Lakeshore Public Television. Join us next week for another Lakeshore Focus. Until then, I'm Keith Kirkpatrick saying, make a positive difference in our world today.